What's up, everyone? Tera Roberts here with Fantasy Alarm, and we're talking free agency deep cuts for week 6. The market for streaming quarterbacks is slim right now. Between injuries and bye weeks, there just aren't a lot of high upside options. If you weren't able to grab Geno Smith or Carson Wentz, you could go with Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not typically a big stream Jimmy G kind of girl because he's not exactly a high upside player. His game of the year came last week against Carolina. 18 completions, 253 yards, 2 touchdowns. So even on his best day, the likelihood of him surpassing 20 fantasy points is slim to none. But he has a stable floor. And maybe we can catch him on a hot streak here because he is playing Atlanta. Quarterbacks tend to do well against Atlanta, so grab Jimmy G if you need a quarterback. Moving on to running backs, there's actually a decent amount of low roster guys that you can plug in this week or stash for handcuffing purposes. Let's start off with Mike Boone. Mike Boone is only 36% rostered in Yahoo leagues. This one is a bit shocking to me because Boone offers both short-term and long-term value. In the short term, the Broncos' next 3 games are against the Chargers, Jets, Texans, all of whom gave up huge games to opposing running backs in week 5. He should be flex-worthy option in all of those matchups. Long term, the sample size is very small, but Boone looked better than Melvin Gordon last week. I expect this to continue to operate as a split backfield for the remainder of the season. Jerick McKinnon has been on my deep cuts list before. Oddly enough, Isaiah Pacheco is the higher rostered back. But I still think that Jerick McKinnon is the higher upside option that you want to roster in this Kansas City offense because of his pass catching capability. In week 5, McKinnon outsnapped both Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Isaiah Pacheco and had 8 carries for 53 yards and 2 receptions for 19 yards. He is the handcuff to roster in the Chiefs backfield. Tevin Coleman is also an interesting handcuff option. Coleman had 8 carries for 23 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground and 3 receptions for 44 yards and 1 receiving touchdown. Tyrion Davis-Price returned to practice, so Coleman will have competition. But the San Francisco backup is valuable. It's a valuable bench piece to have because they tend to get opportunities in this run-heavy offense that suffers a lot of injuries, and Kyle Shanahan just likes Tevin Coleman. Let's slide one more running back in there real quick. This is a injury-only situation, obviously. Deon Jackson. Jonathan Taylor's status is still up in the air. Nyheim Hines is in concussion protocol. Jackson had 13 carries for 62 yards and 4 receptions for 29 yards. I would give Jackson the edge over Phillip Lindsay if Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines are out. At wide receiver, it is worth a shot to grab Darius Slayton and see if he can continue this leading presence within the Giants receiving core. The Giants receiving core has been non-existent, but Slayton stepped up last week, catching 6 of his 7 targets for 79 yards. Kenny Golladay is out with no timetable on his return. Kadarius Toney injured his other hamstring, so his timeline is likely reset. The only potential competition here is Rondale Robinson, and this will likely take some time for the rookie to get acclimated since he only has 1 catch on the entire season. But speaking of Wan'Dale Robinson, he is worth a stash in deep leagues. The reason being that Robinson logged a limited practice this week, and that's not much, but it is encouraging, considering that Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney didn't practice at all. Wan'Dale Robinson was drafted in the 2nd round by the current Giants regime. They are invested in him, and they want to give him opportunities to play when he is healthy. If you are looking for a player that can offer immediate flex value, Rondale Moore is very available on waivers. Moore has wide receiver 2 upside playing out of the slot. Moore had 7 receptions on 8 targets for 68 yards in week 5. There was no reason that can't continue. Cliff Kingsbury was very vocal during the offseason about wanting to increase Rondale Moore's role within the offense, and we've seen it. And even when DeAndre Hopkins returns from suspension, I think the player least likely to be affected here will be Rondale Moore because of the nature of his role. For tight end, this one may be very hard to believe, but Will Dissly just might be this year's 2021 Dawson Knox. Well, at least the budgeted version. Dissly had 3 touchdowns this year and has had no more than 4 receptions in a single game. Kind of crazy. He is touchdown dependent, but the market for tight ends right now is really rough. And Disley's matchup against Arizona is excellent. They have given up the second most fantasy points to tight ends. It is worth a gamble. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to Fantasy Alarm, and come back next week for another round of deep waiver wire ads.